Okay, before we get into this one, the energy walking in today is loud, not heavy the way some of my readings get. Loud, proud, like it wants me to say this with my whole chest instead of softening it. I haven't felt energy move quite this strongly through the deck in a while, honestly. This is a general collective reading, so a heads up before we start. This may not all apply to you specifically, and that's completely okay. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Masculine can mean feminine, feminine can mean masculine. Use your own discernment the whole way through. I'm going to be pulling several different threads today because the cards have a lot to say, and different parts of this are going to land for different people. So stay with me through all of it because I think most of you are going to find yourselves somewhere in here. So let's start with the thread that's coming through loudest because honestly it kept interrupting everything else I tried to pull first. There's a controlling low vibration situation a lot of you just walked away from or are in the process of walking away from right now. I'm not talking about something dramatic and obvious necessarily. Sometimes this looks like a relationship, sometimes it's a friendship, sometimes it's even a family dynamic. But the shape of it is the same. Somebody decided who you were allowed to be. They needed you small to feel secure in the dynamic, and the second you started growing past the size they'd assigned you, it threatened the whole thing. This person operated in shady energy, secretive, a little codependent, a little obsessive about keeping tabs on you even while pretending they didn't care. The cards are showing me genuine darkness here. Not evil, exactly. Just deeply unhealed, deeply wounded, the kind of person who hurts people because they've never done the work to stop hurting themselves first. And you got out. However that looked for you, clean break, slow fade, one final moment of clarity. You got out. And I want to actually sit with what that period cost you before we move forward, because I don't think it gets named enough in readings like this. There was a stretch where you genuinely doubted yourself because of this, where you started questioning your own perception of things, wondering if you were the problem, if you were too sensitive, too much, not enough. Whatever story this person needed you to believe to keep you exactly where they wanted you. That's not a small thing to walk through. Having someone slowly convince you that your own read on reality can't be trusted is one of the more disorienting kinds of harm there is, and it takes real work to undo once you're out of it. You did that work. Slowly, privately, the kind of work that doesn't show up in a highlight reel. You learned to trust your own gut again. You learned the difference between actual reflection and the kind of self-doubt someone else planted in you on purpose. That distinction matters, and you earned it back the hard way. And here's the twist on this thread, though, and I want to actually sit with it because it's not what you'd expect. This person is still thinking about you, secretly, quietly, in a way they would never admit out loud, possibly not even to themselves. I'm seeing somebody fixated, almost obsessively so, watching from a distance, still emotionally tangled up in whatever this was, even while pretending they've moved on completely. They could even be in a new relationship right now, unhappy, going through the motions, comparing it constantly to what they had with you, and resenting you a little for being the standard nothing else measures up to. This person knows they have to end something. A relationship, a pattern, a version of their life that isn't working. And on some level, whether they've said it to anyone yet or not, they know they eventually have to deal with what happened between you and them. Whether that means an apology, a confession, or just quietly disappearing from your radar entirely, that part's still unfolding. But the karmic wheel on this one is turning, And it's turning, whether they're ready for it or not. If this person does come back around, and for some of you, that's a real possibility, let their actions do the talking, not their words. Watch for consistency, not promises. And now let's pull a second thread, because there's a completely different energy waiting on the other side of this. There is a powerful masculine energy making moves towards some of you, not the chaotic, unstable kind from the last thread, the opposite. This is someone established, grounded, the kind of person who likes commitment, who likes building something real instead of keeping things casual and undefined. Some of you might be sensing a Taurus energy here, or just generally somebody steady, someone who shows up the way they say they will. This person is going through their own transition right now, which is part of why the timing has felt delayed if you've been wondering why nothing's moved faster. They're closing out their own chapter, possibly a breakup, possibly a long stretch of unhappiness in a relationship that wasn't serving them either, before they're free to fully step toward you. I'm seeing genuine heartbreak in their story too. Their own version of having to leave something behind that mattered to them once. But once they're clear, they move with intention. No games, no wishy-washy energy, no coming in hot and disappearing. This is somebody who, once they decide, decides fully. And I want to tell you a little more about where this person is coming from, because I think it changes how you'll receive them when they actually show up. This isn't somebody who's had an easy road either. They've done their own version of the work, their own healing, their own slow rebuild after their own hard ending. Which means when they look at you, they're not looking for someone to fix or rescue or complete them. They recognize you. They see somebody who tore something down and built it back sturdier because they did the same thing themselves, and that recognition is part of what's actually pulling them toward you, not your potential, what you've already become. That's a fundamentally different foundation than anything built on rescue or fantasy. This is two whole people both already standing on solid ground, recognizing each other. That's rarer than people think. And it's exactly what's heading towards some of you. And there's a financial thread running underneath all of this too. And I don't want to skip past it just because it's not as emotionally loaded as the relationship stuff. Several of you are entering a real period of financial movement, not vague abundance talk, actual tangible shifts, a raise, a new opportunity reaching back out to you from somewhere you didn't expect. Something you've been quietly building finally starting to generate real return instead of just costing you time and energy. This matters beyond the money itself. For a lot of you, financial dependency was part of what kept you tangled in that first thread for longer than you wanted to be. When you don't have your own resources, leaving feels impossible, even when you know you should. This shift is the universe quietly removing that excuse for good. You are not going to find yourself trapped somewhere by money again. And I want to get specific about what this actually looks like for some of you, because vague abundance talk doesn't help anybody plan their life. For some of you, this is a literal job change, a position opening up that you weren't actively chasing, somebody reaching out to you instead of the other way around for once. For others, it's less dramatic, but steadier. A gradual increase, a side project that's been losing money, or breaking even for a long time, finally tipping into profit, debt that's been hanging over you starting to actually shrink instead of just holding steady. For a few of you, this could even look like a return to something, a former employer or client reaching back out with a better offer than the one you left on, which would be its own quiet kind of vindication. I'm also seeing some of you receiving something unexpected. Not necessarily a windfall, but a return of something you'd written off. Money owed to you that you'd stopped expecting back. An asset or an old investment quietly appreciating while you weren't paying attention to it. Small things adding up to something that finally feels like breathing room instead of survival mode. The common thread across all of this is timing. None of it is rushed. It's arriving in the order your life can actually absorb it, which is honestly better than a single overwhelming windfall would be. You're being given enough to build a real foundation, not just enough to feel good for a week. And there's a thread here about family I want to pull too, because I don't think this reading is complete without it. And I know it'll land hardest for some of you specifically. Several of you are in the middle of healing something that goes back further than your own life. A pattern in your family, control, silence, people staying in situations that were quietly hurting them because that's just what was done, generation after generation. You might be the first person in your line who actually broke that, who looked at the pattern clearly enough to name it and then refused to keep repeating it. Maybe you watched a parent or grandparent stay somewhere out of fear or obligation, and some part of you made a quiet vow a long time ago that you wouldn't repeat it, long before you had the tools to actually follow through on that vow. I want you to actually receive that instead of brushing past it, because it's significant. Your children, if you have them or ever will, get to start from a different place because of decisions you made alone, in rooms nobody else saw, probably without realizing at the time how much weight that choice was actually carrying. That's not a small side effect of your own healing. For some of you, it might be the biggest part of this entire reading. And while we're on this thread, some of you are also healing your relationship with your own intuition, separate from any of the people involved in the other threads. Maybe you spent a long time being told your gut feelings were overreactions, being gaslit, subtly or not so subtly, into doubting what you already knew to be true. The cards are showing me that's reversing now. You're trusting your own internal signals again. The pull towards something, the resistance to something else. The quiet knowing that shows up before your mind has caught up with the reasons. That instinct was never wrong. It just got buried under other people's noise for a while. And let's go back to the people who are watching you right now, because there's a whole separate group of energy here worth pulling apart from the one main person we already talked about. I'm seeing other people, not just the one from before, a wider circle, who are envious, triggered, a little intimidated by how far you've come, even people who'd never say it out loud. Some of them gossip, some of them throw shade, some of them just go quiet around you in a way that feels different than it used to, because your energy now makes them uncomfortably aware of where they're still stuck. None of that is actually about you. It's never about you. It's about what your growth reflects back at people who haven't done their own work yet. The cards are showing me you're deeply protected from this, not in a way where it never touches you, but in a way where it just doesn't stick the way it used to. Whatever gets thrown your way bounces off and circles back to whoever threw it every single time. And I want to actually name something here because I think a lot of you have felt this without having language for it. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with outgrowing people. Nobody really prepares you for that part. You expect the relief of getting away from what was actively hurting you, and that relief is real, but underneath it, there's sometimes this quieter grief about realizing you can't go back to certain friendships or certain rooms the way you used to because you're just not the same size anymore. People you used to laugh with constantly now feel like they're speaking a slightly different language than you. That's not you being arrogant or full of yourself. That's just what happens when you grow, and not everyone around you grows at the same pace. It's okay to grieve that, even while you're also genuinely happy about where you've landed. Both things can be true. You don't have to pretend the growth came free of any cost just because the cost was worth it. Okay, so for some of you, though, there's also a smaller circle forming. New people who actually match this version of you. Not a replacement for what you lost, just an addition. People who don't flinch at your depth, who can keep up with the version of you that exists now instead of the smaller one they never actually knew. That circle might still be small right now, even just 1 or 2 people. But the cards are showing me it's going to keep growing steadily. The way real things grow, not the way performative friendships multiply and then disappear just as fast. There's also a thread here about your own voice that I don't want to lose in everything else. Several of you are being called to speak on something, share something, put out into the world whatever you've been sitting on out of fear it wasn't ready or you weren't ready. The cards are telling me the timing is now. Not eventually, not once you feel more prepared. People are already primed to receive whatever this is from you. There's real recognition coming, the kind that actually changes the trajectory of things for you. Not just a few likes and then silence. And I want to actually address the fear underneath this thread directly, because I don't think naming "speak your truth" without addressing the fear actually helps anybody. A lot of you have stayed quiet for a long time because somewhere along the way, somebody made being visible feel dangerous. Maybe that traces back to the same person from the first thread. Maybe it's older than that. Maybe it's just a general pattern of learning that taking up space gets you criticized. So it felt safer to just not take up much space at all. That fear is real, and it makes sense given what you've been through. I'm not going to pretend it should just evaporate because a reading told you to be brave. What I am seeing is that the version of you ready to actually do this isn't doing it from a place of having no fear left. She's doing it scared and choosing to do it anyway, because she's finally decided the cost of staying quiet is higher than the cost of being seen and possibly judged for it. That's the actual definition of courage, by the way, not absence of fear. Action in spite of it. And some of you are also going to find that once you do start speaking up, it gets easier faster than you expect. The first time is always the hardest. After that, you start to realize that the catastrophic reaction you were bracing for mostly doesn't happen, and the people who do react badly were never actually your people to begin with. Their discomfort with your visibility was never your responsibility to manage. Now, let's go back once more to that first person, because I keep getting pulled back to them, and I think it's important. I'm seeing a moment ahead where you and this person end up in the same space. Again, unplanned, the kind of accidental crossing of paths neither of you saw coming. And I want to tell you, honestly, it's not going to feel like the dramatic confrontation some part of you might still want. It's going to feel almost anticlimactic. You'll look at them and feel surprisingly little. Maybe some passing curiosity. The charge that used to live in your chest at the thought of seeing them again just won't be there anymore. That's actually the real marker of freedom. Not a big moment of revenge or vindication, just genuinely, quietly, not caring anymore. For those of you connected to that second thread, the steady masculine energy coming in, I'm seeing flowers, oddly specific, so I'll say it. Some kind of old-fashioned gesture, something that feels almost out of place given how casual everything tends to be these days. This is somebody who still believes showing up for someone should look like something. Somebody who isn't intimidated by how far you've come, they're drawn to it. They want to know how you built what you built. They respect it instead of competing with it. That's rare. Most people, when they encounter someone who's genuinely come into their own power, back away, consciously or not. because it makes their own gaps feel sharper by comparison. This person doesn't do that. They want to stand next to your light, not dim it. Okay, so I am something else here too, separate from all the threads we've covered so far, because I think it's meant for almost everyone watching this, regardless of which thread actually applies to your life. If you have a question sitting in the back of your mind right now, something you've been going back and forth on, something you keep almost asking the universe and then talking yourself out of, the answer is yes. I don't usually say it that plainly, but that's what's coming through, clean and direct, no hedging. You are making whatever is currently confusing you more complicated than it actually needs to be. The cards keep repeating this, so I'm going to repeat it too. Trust the instinct that showed up first before you had time to second guess it or build a justification around a different answer. That first instinct is your actual knowing. Everything that comes after it is just noise your fear adds on top to keep you safe in the short term, even when it's not actually serving you long term. You are safe. You are guided. Whatever you're healing right now is actually healing even on the days it doesn't feel like progress. And your own internal sense of things has been right this whole time, even during the stretch where someone convinced you not to trust it. And this person is now standing up for you because of the amount of guilt they feel in a different way than the people gossiping out of envy. Some of you have somebody specifically tied to that first thread who is actively, quietly working through what they put you through, separate from the new love thread entirely. If that's you, the cards are showing a slow but real reckoning happening on their end, whether or not they ever bring it directly to you. And I want to bring all of these threads back together for a second, because I think it's easy to get lost in the different pieces and miss the actual center of this reading. None of what's coming, not the protection, not the new person, not the money, not the recognition, happened because you sat around waiting for it. The cards are extremely clear about that. You did the work first. You chose yourself in rooms with no audience, long before any of this showed up, to confirm it. Everything unfolding now is just the result catching up to the work you already did. And I want to say something to the ones still gossiping, still envious, still trying to make themselves feel bigger by trying to make you feel smaller. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them proof of anything. The more you simply exist in your power, without performing it or flaunting it, the more unbearable it becomes for anyone still invested in the smaller version of you. Let it be unbearable for them. That's not your job to manage anymore. The protection you're feeling isn't some outside force suddenly deciding to shield you, by the way. It's simpler than that. You stopped leaking your own energy into people and situations that didn't deserve it. All of that energy you used to spend managing somebody else's moods, predicting somebody else's reactions, shrinking to avoid somebody else's anger, that's yours again now. Energy that isn't constantly being drained somewhere else just naturally reads as protection, as luck, as things finally working out. It's not magic, it's math. You stopped the leak, so the well filled back up. And there's one more piece I want to leave you with, because I think it might matter more than any of the individual threads. This isn't just about you. Somebody in your life right now, maybe somebody you don't think is paying that much attention, is quietly watching how you handled all of this and recalibrating what they believe is possible for their own life. You didn't just rebuild yourself, you changed the ceiling on what somebody else believes they're allowed to become. That ripple doesn't show up in one dramatic moment. It shows up years from now, in somebody else's life, in a shift they probably won't even trace back to you. And a quick note on energy before we close out. because some of you are going to feel specifically called out by this, and I want to make sure it actually reaches you. If you're a fire sign, this whole reading probably hit different for you today, especially the parts about your voice and stepping into recognition. That's exactly your territory. And the timing the cards are showing lines up with what fire energy tends to do once it decides to move. If you're an earth sign, the financial thread is likely where you felt the strongest pull, because steady, tangible movement is the language you actually trust over abstract promises. Water signs, I'd bet the first thread, the one about getting free from something that kept you small, hit hardest because you feel things all the way down, and that kind of release takes longer to fully process. And air signs, the voice thread, and the new recognition piece are probably what's resonating. Since communication and being understood properly is where you live. You don't have to know your own chart for any of this to land, by the way. Most of you already knew which thread was yours within the first sentence of it, long before I said anything about elements or signs. That instinct was the actual reading. Everything else was just me catching up to what you already felt. So whichever thread landed for you today, the one about getting free from something that kept you small, the one about new, steady love finally arriving, the one about money loosening its grip on your choices, or the one about your own voice finally being ready to be heard, know that they're all actually the same thread underneath. You chose yourself. Everything else is just the world catching up to that decision. You are not the same person they decided you were. You are powerful, not someday. Right now, exactly as you are. And the people who never expected that from you are finding out in real time, whether they wanted to or not, and let them turn their heads, keep walking in whichever direction your specific thread is actually pulling you, and trust that the pull itself is the guidance, even when the destination isn't fully clear yet. And if this landed for you, drop it in the comments. Tell me which thread was actually yours. The one about getting free, the one about new love, the one about money, or the one about your voice. Tell me your sign too if you want. I'm curious whether the elemental breakdown actually matched up for people, or whether your own knowing got there faster than the astrology did. I read every single one, and they genuinely shape what I bring through for future readings. If you're new here, welcome. Subscribe if you haven't. It's free, and it genuinely helps this channel keep growing. There's a real community in this comment section, people confirming things for each other, cheering each other through exactly this kind of glow up, and I'd love to have you be part of it. For those of you who want something specific to your own situation, your own names, your own dates, your own version of whichever thread actually applies to you, or even just clarity on which thread is genuinely yours if more than one of them resonated tonight, I do personal readings. Links in the description, along with my email if you'd rather reach out that way for pricing and details. I try to get back to everyone as fast as I genuinely can. And if you're able to support the channel through a membership or something one time whenever it feels right, it's never expected, but it's always deeply appreciated. It's what keeps this whole thing running, and it's what lets me keep bringing through readings with this many layers instead of having to rush and flatten everything into one quick message. You did this, every bit of it. Not the universe doing it to you or for you. You choosing yourself in rooms nobody else was standing in over and over until choosing yourself just became who you are. Whichever thread tonight was actually yours, that part was always true underneath it. I'll see you in the next one.